It was 3 a.m. and Hiro was still awake, staring at the computer screen with bleary eyes. The deadline for his big work project was looming, but instead of making progress, he had spent the last several hours mindlessly scrolling through social media. "Why am I doing this to myself again?" he muttered under his breath, rubbing his temples in frustration. This wasn't the first time he had found himself in this position. In fact, it had become an all too familiar pattern. No matter how hard he tried, Hiro just couldn't seem to break his habit of procrastination. "I'll do it later," he told himself. "I work better under pressure anyway." But the pressure never seemed to motivate him. Instead, it just made him more anxious. As the deadlines loomed closer, Hiro would find himself staying up late into the night, frantically trying to complete tasks at the last minute. His work suffered, his relationships suffered, and his health suffered. Still, no matter how much he hated the consequences of his procrastination, he just couldn't seem to break the habit. "Why can't I just do the things I need to do?" Hiro said aloud in frustration, running his hands through his hair. "I know what I need to do, I just can't bring myself to do it." This wasn't the first time Hiro had found himself in this situation. It happened again and again, whether it was important work deadlines, bills that needed to be paid, or even just simple household chores. He would put them off, sometimes for weeks, until the very last minute. And every time it caused him stress, anxiety, and more problems down the line. "I need to find a way to stop this," Hiro said to himself. But how? Determined to finally break free of this crippling habit, Hiro decided to seek out help. He knew he couldn't continue living this way. The stress was starting to take a serious toll. After some research, he came across the name of a renowned expert on habit change, Master Li, a wise old monk who was said to have helped countless people overcome their deepest struggles. Without hesitation, Hiro packed a bag and set out to the remote monastery where Master Li lived. It was a long and arduous journey, but Hiro was determined to make it. When he finally arrived at the monastery gates, he was greeted by Master Li himself, a serene and gentle-looking older man with deep, penetrating eyes. "I've been expecting you, Hiro," Master Li said, placing a hand on Hiro's shoulder. "Come, let us talk." Hiro followed Master Li to a peaceful garden area where they sat down on a wooden bench overlooking a tranquil pond. Hiro took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts, before launching into an explanation of his struggle with procrastination. "Master Li, I just can't seem to stop putting things off," Hiro said, his voice tinged with frustration. "No matter how hard I try, I always find myself putting off important tasks until the last minute. It's causing so many problems in my life. My work is suffering, my relationships are suffering, and I'm constantly stressed and anxious. I feel like I'm trapped in this never-ending cycle, and I don't know how to break free." Master Li nodded slowly, his eyes filled with understanding. "Procrastination is a very common struggle, Hiro," he said. "It is a habit that plagues many people, causing them great distress and difficulty in their lives." "But why can't I just do the things I need to do?" Hiro asked, his brow furrowed. "I know what I need to do. I just can't bring myself to do it. It's like there's this invisible force holding me back." Master Li chuckled softly. "Ah, but that invisible force is not so invisible, my friend," he said. "It is simply the product of our own minds, our thoughts, our emotions, and our deeply ingrained habits." He paused, gazing out over the tranquil pond. "You see, procrastination is not just a behavior, but a complex psychological phenomenon. It is rooted in our fear of failure, our desire for immediate gratification, and our tendency to prioritize short-term comfort over long-term success." Hiro listened intently, nodding along as Master Li spoke. "So how do I overcome it?" he asked. "How do I break this habit that's been holding me back for so long?" Master Li smiled. "The key, Hiro, is to understand the underlying causes of your procrastination, and then develop strategies to address them," he said. "It's not an easy process, but with the right mindset and approach, it is possible to break free from this crippling habit." Hiro leaned in, his eyes filled with hope. "Please, Master Li, tell me more. I'm ready to do whatever it takes." Master Li nodded. "Very well then. Let us begin." He cleared his throat and continued. "One of the primary drivers of procrastination is fear. Fear of failure, fear of discomfort, fear of the unknown. When we are faced with a task that seems daunting or challenging, our natural inclination is to avoid it, to put it off until later. We tell ourselves that we'll feel better if we just relax and enjoy the moment, rather than facing the difficult work that needs to be done. Hiro nodded, recognizing this pattern in his own behavior. "That's exactly what I do," he said. "I tell myself that I'll feel better if I just watch TV or scroll through social media instead of tackling my work." "Precisely," Master Lee said. "And in the moment, that may provide a temporary sense of relief. But in the long run, it only serves to perpetuate the cycle of procrastination, causing more stress and anxiety down the line." He paused, letting the words sink in. The key is to recognize this fear for what it is and to develop strategies to overcome it. One powerful technique is to break down large, daunting tasks into smaller, more manageable steps. Hiro furrowed his brow. "Smaller steps? What do you mean?" "Well, let's take a concrete example," Master Lee said. "Let's say you have a big project due at work, and you've been putting it off for weeks. Instead of looking at the whole project as one overwhelming task, try breaking it down into smaller, more manageable steps." He paused, thinking for a moment. "For instance, you might start by simply opening the file and reviewing the instructions. Then you could spend some time brainstorming ideas or outlining the structure of the project. From there, you could focus on completing one small section at a time, rather than trying to tackle the entire thing at once." Hiro nodded slowly, considering the idea. "That makes sense," he said. "When I look at the whole project, it just feels like this massive, insurmountable thing. But if I break it down into smaller steps, it might not feel so overwhelming." "Exactly," Master Lee said. "And the beauty of this approach is that it not only helps to overcome the initial fear and resistance, but it also builds momentum. As you start to complete those smaller steps, you'll begin to feel a sense of progress and accomplishment, which can be hugely motivating." He leaned forward, his eyes sparkling with wisdom. "Another key aspect of overcoming procrastination is to cultivate self-compassion. It's important to remember that we all struggle with this habit to some degree, and that beating ourselves up over it is only going to make things worse." Hiro nodded, thinking about the countless times he had berated himself for his inability to just get things done. "Instead of being so hard on yourself," Master Lee continued, "try to approach the situation with kindness and understanding. Acknowledge that it's a difficult habit to break and that you're doing the best you can. Celebrate the small victories and be patient with yourself as you work to develop new, more productive habits." Hiro felt a sense of relief washing over him. "That's so important," he said. "I've been so critical of myself, and it's only made it harder to keep trying. Approaching it with self-compassion could make a real difference." Master Lee nodded. "Absolutely. And the final piece of the puzzle, Hiro, is to find ways to make the tasks you're procrastinating on more enjoyable or rewarding." Hiro raised an eyebrow. "More enjoyable? How can doing the dishes or filing my taxes ever be enjoyable?" Master Lee chuckled. "Well, it may not be inherently enjoyable, but you can certainly find ways to make it less unpleasant," he said. "For example, you could try listening to your favorite music or podcast while you're doing the dishes, or reward yourself with a small treat after you've completed a particularly onerous task." He paused, considering his words. "And remember, the key is not to find the tasks themselves enjoyable, but to find ways to make the process of completing them more engaging and rewarding. When you can associate positive feelings with the things you need to do, it becomes much easier to overcome that initial resistance and inertia." Hiro nodded, his mind racing with ideas. "That makes a lot of sense," he said. "I never really thought about trying to make these tasks more enjoyable or rewarding. I just kind of saw them as necessary evils that I had to slog through." Master Lee smiled. But that's where the true power of habit change lies, Hiro. It's not about forcing ourselves to do things we hate, but about reframing our perspective and finding ways to make the process more fulfilling and satisfying."